goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh my God.
Trip of a lifetime, am I right?
Trip of a lifetime, and at the start of Pride Month, no less.
Oh yeah. Happy Pride Month. It's Pride.
Happy Pride, gay.
Hi, gay.
Hi, gay. Happy Pride Month.
Nothing says pride more than your two queer doctors hugging on screen before one of them does a cannon into the TARDIS and turns into Billy Piper.
Turns into that is pretty Pride. I was going to do an ironic one and says nothing says Happy Pride Month like killing your queer lead, but
this was the nicer one.
They embraced and turned into Billy Piper. That's kind of all I ever really wished for.
Hey, listen, Camp or Damp's going to be a wild ride this episode. Oh goodness, how are you feeling on the come down?
I've been trying to work out how I feel, to be honest. So we watched this episode, dear listener, on Saturday night in the cinema, like many of you will have done. And we'll get into this, but there was kind of the initial rush of feeling that came with the episode. And then the next day I was straight off to Mighty Hoopla on the Sunday and had a lovely time. And then came home and I was like, I'm feeling really off about something. Like something personally has happened. And then this morning on Monday, I've gone into work and we do my work. And again, I was going to the shops and I was like, I feel a bit weird. And I was talking to you and I was saying, I feel really flat. I feel really quite sad actually about the fact that Shooty's gone. And I'm still barely processing it. I feel like, oh, he's gone, but he's not. I haven't really accepted no, it's done. You won't hear the 15th Doctor's theme again. He's finished.
Yeah.
To me, no, not
I
true.
feel a bit robbed. And look, we got a lot to say and we'll get into it. But I feel a bit robbed of the fact that we didn't have time to process before watching the episode, because the conversation was, will he, won't he?
Yeah.
And then when we realised he will, and also that he will came very late in the episode, almost as if it was a recent decision. But it meant that I think we've all kind of had the rug pulled from under us, where for me, not only did we not know that he was leaving, we actually don't know who the current Doctor is.
Technically,
and
no.
So we can't even move on to something new. We're just kind of left in this weird limbo state, and we're like, what's going on?
What's going on? Yeah, so it was a lot to process. I'm currently feeling quite about it. The fallout on social media has been astronomical. I'm not saying it's the worst reaction to a finale ever. I think there's a lot of finales that have been more disliked than this one. But I think at a time when there is just so much online activity around Doctor Who, and we're in the middle of it now, in a way that we haven't been before, because we're much more active in that space and we know more people from that world. It has been there's nothing else on my feed. I could scroll for an hour and there would be new content and new tweets about the finale. I
wonder if this is what the BBC wanted all along, because Russell was we're doing this to make content.
Make content.
Whether or not people loved or hated it, I don't think I've ever seen more people talking about it.
Well, that's true. I mean, someone said I guess they achieved what they wanted with the making content, but they had a 2-minute screen recording of them flicking through TikTok, and it is an uninterrupted flow of just people saying what a dreadful finale. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's also not our review. We always try and give a very balanced and fair review as well. And also, preface doesn't even need saying, but with a lot of love and respect for all the care and craft that goes into making the show as well, and all the behind the scenes, because we don't want to just come in and be okay, time to dunk on it. But I do have some very serious concerns.
But to dunk on it.
Which we'll get into, and we'll get into your reaction as well.
Yes, exactly. Well, if we haven't made it clear, we're talking about the finale for season 2 of Doctor Who, The Reality War. Now, this aired a couple of days ago, 31st of May, written by Russell T Davies and directed by Alex Pillai. And it currently has an IMDb score of 6.7 out of 10. And this is, 3 days after original air?
Yeah, we said this as well. We said this last week. What's funny? No matter how much discourse there is, it kind of gets somewhere towards the 7 anyway.
It's always been around the same. It's quite a consistent scoring. And listen, we'll get into it. Like I said, I didn't hate this episode. I came away from this episode very sugar rush, like you would say, and my concerns have grown in certain areas and my love has stayed in others. We'll get into it. This, for me, overall, it's probably between a 5 and a 6 if I had to rank it. We don't normally rank on Wholala, but it's a mid episode. This isn't. Some people are saying that was the worst episode, Doctor Who, worse when I worse this. That's just not true. That isn't true. To me.
I think the the ending and the end of Belinda's story is for me so evil. Belinda's story particularly, I think, is just so evil that I just don't know what I think really at the minute. But it's not that it's not that I didn't have fun. This is the crazy thing. This is what I'm really finding hard to separate is like, how do you rate an episode? Is it the experience you had watching it? Because I was giggling, kicking my feet, shaking.
Oh my God, I
it.
loved it. Because we saw it in the cinema as well. We were in a cinema and it was so nice. We can dox ourselves now. We were in the View in Leicester Square and there was a huge group of our friends like dotted all around the cinema. So what I found nicest is once the episode was over and we were all kind of like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? A group of us just kind of congregated around each other, consoling some people who were crying snot bubbles out of their nose. And yeah, it was nice to be able to, like, in a group of people afterwards, kind of be like trying to decompress and be like, what did we just watch?
Yeah, I couldn't really tell what I've watched, and I've come to expect the RTD Sugar Rush. When we watched the 60th specials, I came off the back of those and I was like, 5 out of 5. They're perfect. Nothing needs to change. They're immaculate stories. I've never felt this way about Doctor Who. Then you stop, you pause, you digest, you absorb some other opinions, you like scratch under the surface, you ask a few questions, you go back and watch it again and you go, wait a second.
Hold the phone.
And then you reframe it. And so I was kind of waiting to actually like be able to absorb it enough first and be like open to like, let's see where I land. And I think I know where I've landed, but I couldn't put a score on it.
No, exactly. Well, look, before we get into all of our thoughts, we thought we could put a little recap together for you of the episode. It is on iPlayer. It's on Disney Plus. Definitely give it a watch. I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you haven't given it a watch, but hello. The one listener that is, hello to you. You know who you are. But if you would like it, here is a quick recap of the story.
You're in for a ride.
The episode opens with the Doctor falling from the Bone Palace into the Underverse, only to have a glowing door appear behind him. It opens, and he instantly recognises Anita from the Time Hotel there to save him. She brings him into the hotel and tells him that she's been looking through the doors of the hotel trying to find him. The hotel's in trouble as the 24th of May keeps looping, caused by the Rani's plot to unearth Omega, which they've succeeded in locking into a fix on him.
The Doctor returns to John Smith's house, revealing himself as the Doctor to Belinda and Poppy. Using the Time Hotel doors, they arrive at Unit, and reality starts to bleed through, awakening Unit from the wish, and allowing Rose Noble and the Vlinks to appear. Using microchips in their staff, they call the rest of the team to the tower, uniting the Doctor with Mel, Shirley, and Ruby. The
Rani teleports to Unit to try and persuade the Doctor in joining her on her quest to rebuild the Time Lords from Omega's DNA, but he refuses, causing her to summon the Bone Beasts on the Unit tower. Using the Rani's hoverbike, the Doctor arrives at the Bone Palace, and with Project Indigo, Ruby teleports into Conrad's room only to be met with a gun. In the hall of the palace, the seal of Rassilon turns into the mark of Omega, and the door opens. Belinda and Poppy wait inside a zero room built by Susan Triad, with the hope that once the wish is over, Poppy will survive.
Omega is revealed to have warped and mutated into a mad titan, eating the Rani and scaring off Mrs. Flood. The Doctor uses the Vindicator to channel the power of 1 billion supernovas into Omega, and he retreats back into the Underverse. Meanwhile, Ruby thanks Conrad for making the Wish world happier than it could have been, and uses Desiderium to wish for Conrad to be happy.
Conrad's room turns out to be the TARDIS in disguise, and the Doctor returns there with Ruby, making one last wish. No more wishes. Returning to the Zero Room, Belinda and Poppy emerge, thrilled that she survived. They set a cot up in the TARDIS, ready to take her on a universe of adventures, but as Ruby watches them fold up her coat, it gets smaller and smaller until it disappears completely, and Poppy is gone. She tries to convince them that she was real, but the Doctor tells her that she's mistaken.
Back at Unit, Ruby tries to convince everyone that Poppy was real and refuses to back down, reminding the Doctor that life has been lost and that he was once in the same position when she disappeared. Realizing that there are still slight differences in the world and convinced that he has to save Poppy, he returns to the TARDIS to force his regeneration energy into the console, creating a time shift by a single degree.
Knowing that this would kill him, the 13th Doctor is summoned to the TARDIS to try and stop him, but it's no use, he's made his choice. She helps him with the calculations, then returns to her own timeline, and he fires his regeneration energy into the console. He wakes up in Belinda's garden, where Poppy is now alive and her daughter, as if she always has been. He says a final goodbye to them both and flies away in the TARDIS. Not wanting to regenerate alone, he opens the doors to see Joy as a star, proclaiming joy to the world. He then bursts with regeneration energy and begins to change into a very familiar face. Dum-ba-da-dum, dum-ba-da-dum, dum-ba-da-dum.
You know what? When you say it like that, I immediately feel better about the story.
Yeah, like,
I think when you...
There is a story, like, I'm not saying it's a good or perfect story in whole.
Yeah.
But it, like, it's logical. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't really a moment in there where, except for the Omega bit a bit, where I was like, that doesn't make sense.
I can see how this, like on a page makes sense. Again, it's in the details that it goes wrong.
Yeah, I get that. Well, look, before we dive into our thoughts and to rust, we have a lot. We've got pages of notes. We reached out to all of you on our social media, and here is what you had to say.
Over on X, Aidan said, lightning fast and overstuffed first half led into a heartbreaking final 30 minutes that has me literally shaking. I'm trying to work out if I've been emotionally manipulated or I'm actually excited. So many feelings. Julio said, exhilarating, emotional, exhausting. And at the very end, what? My biggest issue is not with the regeneration itself, but with the fact that one of my favourite doctors has been stuck between 2 rounds of fan service. Whatever the future brings, I can't see it as anything else. Nick says, Punjabi Rani was so wasted. Hopefully she survives in some silly way. The reshoots felt very apparent, maybe just because we know. I do like that they're playing with Ruby seeing reality, but I'm sad that Belle's gone. But lordy, my heart glowed for 13. I nearly had a heart attack, brackets positive. Cameron said, she better be the bad wolf, not 16. Also, Russell, stop smelling your own farts.
That's one way of putting it.
Okay. Soph said, genuinely had a good time until the last 15 minutes. Belinda's ending is so awful to her and completely removes her agency, and Shooty's exit is overshadowed by that return. Jodie coming back did gag me though. We deserve much longer and I will miss you dearly. EJS said, enjoyable finale, way too quick to kill off one of the Ranis. Happy that we have an end to the bi-generations. Still confused about Belle and Poppy. Shooty leaving is just so sad. And for Billy, I'm genuinely concerned for the show. How do we move forward? Elite soundtrack though. Jack said, did it make sense? No. Was it a fabulous piece of television? Also no. Toby said, I don't like that Shooty is gone. I didn't like Omega in this. Yes, it worked emotionally, and I love that cameo. Wary of what's coming. Overall, a good episode yet. What the F?
I think that's very fair.
And last one, Jax said, my first question is, how did you manage it, RTD? I smiled, I cried, I yelled, and I jumped out of my seat. This is like Gwyneth Paltrow, and she's like, I cried, I laughed. I'm not saying it was perfect, but what an accomplishment to cover all of that in 66 minutes. It was nostalgic yet fresh. I'm intrigued, which suits the show title. What a journey.
There you go. It's funny, we don't do a call out on TikTok, but this just reminded me of a TikTok I saw with someone trying to summarize this plot, and they kept calling Omega 3. They just kept being like, and Omega 3 was there.
Omega 3 was there.
We did call out, however, on Blue Sky, and here's what some of you had to say over there. Hamish, friend of the pod, said, I genuinely kind of loved it, and my husband is still raging. I think the true big bad might be Disney, making actors and writers make decisions they perhaps wouldn't have if they didn't have to wait so long to find out if they've got another season. Now we're left with more uncertainty than ever. Ooh. Matt said, really fucking stupid. I loved it. Liam said, my reaction hasn't reacted yet. I'm still waiting for it. That is very fair. Small Raccoon Hand said, the excitement of the cameos overshadowed any of my complaints about the writing. I'll probably look back on it as not that great. Laura said, I think I'm still in shock. Too much going on. Very quick resolution to Omega and the Rani, but in the last 10 minutes, my heart rate was going so damn fast. Oh my God. Intrigued by the prospect of it going forward, though. I think the show will have me in a chokehold forever. Ezra said, am I terrible for being kind of happy when the Rani got eaten? I loved all the scenes of past Doctors. Anita is one of my favourites, and it was so cool to see her again. Poppy's so cute, I can't handle it. And when Belinda called him Uncle Doctor, that was adorable. Did Kate and Ibrahim kiss? I feel like I did, like a little peck on the cheek. Robin said, flawed, but I was beaming throughout. Such a send-off to this era, and did a surprisingly good job of packing in what it did. Turning Omega into a massive type zombie was genius. Only wish Mrs. Flood would have also stayed and been forced to team up with 15 to defeat him. Also, Billy actual Piper? I don't know yet. And Neo Nostalgic said, it was fun, felt a bit rushed until the last 30 minutes, which was really great. The 13 cameo was very sweet, and the 16th Doctor, or Dr. Tyler, as I'm calling him in my head, truly caught me off guard. I'm sad to see Shooty go, but excited to see what Billy does with the role.
Oh, good. Okay, exciting. A good mix of opinions. I think despite a lot of negativity, there's actually a lot of nuance in there when you actually ask people what they think.
Yeah.
So I thought I might start by just contextualizing what I think many suspect has happened behind the scenes for anyone who's not familiar. And this is kind of the question of what happened to the story? What happened to this story? And in my mind, I was saying this, I think I think there's basically 3 versions of the reality war, which is why it's so weird.
Yeah.
I think there's an original version of the reality war, which may have been speculating, intended for Ruby Sunday as the main companion at one point in time.
Yep.
That was rewritten later for Belinda as the main companion, and was later edited again to change the final act to basically kill off Shooty at the end and allow him to regenerate.
Yeah.
So feels quite clear that the ending was not what was originally intended. Someone on Reddit has done a very good job of kind of summarizing what's happened behind the scenes. I'll run through it because then it sets us up for the rest of the conversation. When the reality war was first written and shot, Shooty Gatwa hadn't decided if he was leaving. In fact, it seemed he was eager to continue, even stating that shooting for season 3 would begin next year in an interview with Graham Norton in 2024, but this mention was cut from broadcast. There was a rumour that the original ending involved all the mainline characters celebrating the battle that we see in the episode. The scene would have included Susan overlooking the group from a distance, teasing her return for a future season. In this version of the episode, 15 does not regenerate. I also heard from a friend, again, a rumour, I'm speculating, BBC don't come for me, that she would have been holding baby Poppy.
Okay.
And Poppy wouldn't have been Belinda's daughter, it would have been Susan's mum. So Poppy would have left reality or whatever. But Susan would have had Poppy in her hands and said, come on, mum, we've got work to do.
Okay.
And turned away. Disney Plus also leaked an image as kind of the next time preview on Disney Plus.
It was Disney Plus in Germany.
Yes, it's always Disney Plus Germany.
Yeah.
Those fiends at Disney Plus Germany. They could be behind all the leaks, There's, I think we did it by mistake. There's a scene where 15 is talking with Belinda at a party. It looks like everyone's celebrating. In the background, there's a screen that looks like it says Mayday on it, Happy Mayday, which at least partly confirms that there was another scene that we didn't see that was shot. So there's that. Also worthy of mention, a character called Hallie Chandra was supposedly meant to appear at some point in the season, likely in the original ending as Belinda's dad. This character was played by Archie Lal, as confirmed by his agency. Additionally, an interview with Caroline Ford in Doctor Who Unleashed reveals her character in an outfit we get to see, which was that kind of green Star Wars.
Yeah, kind of buckled fit to the side, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a tweet I saw that was so unfortunately we now just know that Caroline Ford is this dressed up all the time. she just has that fit on.
Yeah.
So that might be the outfit that she was going to wear in the original ending. And then reshoots took place earlier in the year. Unfortunately, this was quite hard to avoid on Doctor Who Twitter that this was happening. That began to kind of cast out over this whole thing. I think it was in February. And so supposedly this was after Shooty had made the decision to leave, which is why we got this ending that kind of tacks on a bit in a bit of an awkward way to the main story. So everything involving the Doctor, Belinda and Poppy in the house was a reshoot. There was reporting from reporting. It's not reporting. There was stalking from outside the house that they were shooting.
The reporting.
With some photos of the setup and the TARDIS regeneration scenes and some of the final scenes in the unit tower were filmed around the same time.
Yeah.
So it seems like there was a bit of a spanner thrown in the works by Gatwa, this is speculation, choosing not to continue in the role. And after that, RTD scrambled to come up with a new ending, which meant that Susan's cameo was cut, amongst other things. Billie Piper's casting, in theory, has only taken place in the last few weeks, which is quite funny. The show might have been going out while this was filmed. We don't know. And wasn't originally planned to have the Doctor regenerate at all in this story. In fact, I think there was some kind of leak / rumor that there was an open-ended regeneration that was at least available for them to use. And I was kind of at this point, a few episodes back, thinking maybe they have both available and they haven't decided which one they're going to use, basically. And they'll decide as and when, whether or not it gets renewed.
Yeah.
And we can see some other clues. It's clear there's been Billie Piper digitally imposed over the top of Shooty Gatwa's body. They've done it, I think, quite well. A lot of people aren't happy with it. I think she looks great, and I think it looks quite natural. Maybe that's just on me and being blind, but I thought it looked fine.
I think it looks fine. I mean, I can imagine that they'd fit her in that outfit. It's interesting because it's quite a gender-neutral outfit, especially after the conversation of Russell being we'd never put David Tennant and Jodie Whittaker's costume, which is literally a trench coat and trousers. So it's interesting that Shooty was in this kind of gender-neutral outfit.
Yes, exactly. And I think there was another clue that Jodie had also come in quite late, I think, to film the regen scene because...
I've got this. So it's posted around the beginning of March, I think the 8th of March. She went on This Morning, the talk show, to talk about her new Netflix drama, Toxic Town, and she showed that she had quite long brown hair. And in Unleashed, she was saying she had to wear a wig. She was I've got long brown hair at the minute, and that's not very 13. And So we know that she had that hairstyle
Yes.
early this year.
Yeah.
As well as Shooty photographed in February having had like a slit in the corner of his hair that they
Yes.
had to like, you can kind of see it and Unleash a bit better.
They kind of
had to like
brushed it
fill
over.
in. They
Yeah.
brushed it over. So it's interesting because there is the scene that keeps tripping me up on this, which makes it so clear there's reshoots. And to be honest, as a fan, it feels frustrating. And I don't know the ins and outs of the behind the scenes, but it feels frustrating that the market that they're really pushing this towards is this was the plan all along.
Yeah.
This was the plan all along. And it's almost as if it's like trying to reassure us when, to me anyway, it feels almost a bit insulting because it is clear this stuff happened, these reshoots happened, we're aware of it. And there's a scene where they've just folded Poppy's coat together, and we'll get into it. We're going to try and talk through this a bit chronologically. But on this, when Ruby is saying to the doctor, like, oh no, like, what about Poppy? And the doctor's like, what about Poppy? Who's Poppy? And Belinda clearly is blissfully unaware and happy and smiling, who's Poppy? And Ruby's like pushing for it. It's clear that there was a version of this story where the doctor is aware who Poppy was, but he's trying to protect Belinda because he's kind of like stumbling over his words, like, Ruby, I think you're confused. And then there's this wide shot where I could only imagine it would have been a close up in this original story where Ruby's looking at him confused and Belinda's like looking at the TARDIS console, so happy and excited, and he winks at Ruby. He winks as if to be like, I know. And in this version of the story, and I'm assuming it lines up with what you said about Susan carrying the baby at the end, Poppy doesn't exist anymore in our world, and Ruby and the doctor are the only two that remember, maybe because they were both the ones with the baby at the end, I don't know. And Belinda has forgotten, so they're trying to protect her. And I think that, in a way, is a better ending for Poppy. So it's frustrating that what we got feels like what it was, which is like a lot of cuts put together.
Yes. I think there was this whole conversation which seemed to begin quite a long time ago when they were premiering this season. And we're going to do a separate episode next week where we talk about the season overall, that Disney had not gone ahead with renewing season 3, and the BBC insisted, like, no, this is normal, this is fine. They only ever renew at the end of a season finishing. And we've said before, like, we're not sure if that's always true, to be honest with you. Like, we have a couple of examples where that might not be true. Yeah. And I think their delay in making a confirmation, because their investment is so significant, the BBC it's been reported elsewhere that the BBC has said that they will go ahead with
but nothing official.
Nothing official. That they will go ahead, a source has said that Doctor Who will go on.
I like a sauce, where is it?
What kind of sauce you got? Any sauce at the table? They will go ahead with Doctor Who with or without Disney. But I imagine they'd like Disney to come on because Disney can give them a load of cash and an international audience. So that'd be really great if they could come on board, please.
Do you remember BBC America? What happened to that? Bring that back.
I remember there was a BBC America Doctor Who account, and they were like shut down like as soon as the Disney announcement was announced, and they were like, "It's been an honor. Like, thanks everyone, thanks for the ride." And I was like, "Goodbye, BBC America Doctor Who."
Sayonara.
They vanished like Belinda did on the other side of the threshold.
Oh God.
So what's your overall in 2 sentences? What's your review of this story?
Oh God, 2 sentences. That's quite. I do have overall thoughts. I'm going to spill into a bit more than 2 sentences if I have my permission.
Yeah.
I just don't think I could condense it into it. So overall, I loved the first half. I kept turning next to the person I was with in the cinema, and I kept being like, "Oh my God," because I fully went into this finale being like, "I think this is going to be bad," and I went into it with that mentality, to be honest. And I was really surprised. Like, Anita took me by surprise, and we'll get into like the nitty gritty of it. But I kept turning to the person I was actually saying, "Oh my God, I'm loving this." Like the reveals were a shock. I thought it was clever. I thought it was unexpected. And I felt that right up until the Omega scene, because everything until then I found joy from. In the Omega bit, I was disappointed. I felt like it was a waste of the Rani potential. I felt like it was a waste of the Omega potential. I don't think it needed it. I feel like the ending was messy overall and felt like it was victim to reshoots. However, there is, and I'll get into it later, there is some of my favourite ever Doctor Who within the latter part of this episode. Like some of the best stuff I think the show has ever done. And I'm sad because because of these late minute reshoots, it feels like the characters suffered. I feel like the Doctor suffered. I feel like the companions suffered. I particularly feel like Belinda suffered. And then pushing this narrative that it was the plan all along feels a bit like propaganda-esque, where they're just like, "Oh, this is what we're doing all along. We're trying to convince you." And my overall thoughts is that I wouldn't want, and again, we'll talk about more next week, I wouldn't want anyone to discredit this whole season, let alone this whole show, because of a finale that you don't love. Because I think it has been a fantastic season, and much as this is a messy finale, that doesn't ruin it for me. What about you? What do you think?
I think, like, all my love to the team working on this show and this story, because I think I agree with you, there's loads great within this season, within the story that's good and done with a lot of love and care. And I love seeing like the behind the scenes. I love seeing like what the editors are putting on their Instagrams. I love seeing the behind the scenes of how they built the sets. I love all of that stuff. And it sounds like, you know, there's a lot of rumors going around about like why Shooty might have chosen to leave. If he did choose to leave, we don't know. Like why that might have been the case.
You said we are not getting sued on Wholala.
I'm not getting sued for Wholala. But if that did happen, then, you know, I think rewriting your season arc and rewriting your finale 2 or 3 or 4 times to make it work within like the constraints of, you know, what's already been planned, like where actors going to be on certain days, like what sets are built and are not, and whose hair has grown, you know, like what can we make a wig out of, like, you know, it's difficult, it's really difficult. And I think within that have they saved it? I don't really know. I think this was a really messy finale for me. I'm really sad about Shooty's departure. I think it just, for me, caught me so unaware. Like, even though I kind of knew it was coming, when he said in the episode, like, oh, not with this face, or it was earlier than that, he was like, I need to go and do something only a Time Lord can do, or whatever he said. And the groan I let out, I was
like, it's coming.
No, I was like, no. Like, I really when I realized it was in motion and it was that ending that was coming up, I was like, oh, like shit.
Like 2 minutes before that, I turned to the person I was next to, I was like, we're so near the end of this episode, they can't do a regeneration. Like, the plot has been fixed. Like, the story's over.
Yeah, whereas I was kind of thinking about 20 minutes in when Omega was defeated, I was like, we have a lot of story left to go.
Which is often the opposite complaint we have.
Yeah, I was like, this is funny. Like, actually, funny enough, I prefer a longer episode overall, but in this episode, actually, there were moments that felt a bit like they were padding for time. Let's get into it. I think let's start with what we were enjoying. We both, I think, really enjoyed the first act. I am so on board with what you just said, which is about Anita. As soon as we return to the exact moment we left, the Doctor is falling and that door appears and Anita's like, if you'd like to come with me, sir. I was like,
I was like, screaming.
I was like, yes. I was like, they've saved it. Like right away, I went in like you, such a pessimist. We just rewatched Wishworld and I was like, I don't know. And I was like, of course. Like, it's something only Doctor Who can do. Something that I didn't think they would do, because it felt like the Christmas special, like that was quite late production-wise.
Normally they don't like tie in that importance to a Christmas special, but this episode so heavily relied on it, which I loved. It was such good payoff.
Yes, and Anita was such a fan favourite that just seeing her again made me feel warm and fuzzy. I was like, oh God, I love you, Anita. You had some of the best chemistry with shooting this whole era, and I'm so glad that you get a proper appearance in this. And I hope you're back. I hope if the Time Hotel becomes a central thing, like excellent, brilliant. And then I think, you know, there's a lot of fan service in this episode. I liked them doing a bit of I had a look for you, I went in different rooms, Matt Smith's face popping up. I told you Matt Smith was going to be in it. I told you. And he was. So I was right. There was something about that number 11. And Anita realizing that the Doctor is gay and immediately running off to get pregnant with the head of HR. Sure. Did sort of undermine a platonic love for me, but was quite funny.
Oh, but no, I definitely got the vibe in Joyce the World that Anita was in love with the Doctor, and I kind of by the end of the episode had thought she'd realised that like he didn't love her back, but I thought it was so beautiful. I completely agree with you that like when the door opened, and again there's a complaint to be made about like the MCUification of Doctor Who, and I was like the TVA.
You're right, I didn't even think of that. This is their portals, isn't it?
Literally. But I loved it. It was the one thing, because full honesty, there were leaks about the Jodie bit and there were leaks about the Billy bit for me. I tried my best to shield you from the Billy thing. I was like, I know something, Billy. I don't want to tell you unless you want to know. And you're like, I don't know. And I was like, well, then I don't want you to find out. Yeah. But the Anita thing was a complete shock for me. And I screamed, and same with you, within like the first 2 minutes, I was like, this episode's going to be great. Like, this is fantastic. And the fact that it wasn't just, I thought it might be a short gag at the beginning. And when she drops him off into John Smith's house and she was like, here we go, back in your house. And it was like off screen. I was like, oh, we're not going to see her again. That was it. But it wasn't. I loved the reused footage. I do find it hilarious and so upsetting that Shooty's doctor never met the Daleks, but Anita did. Anita met the Daleks.
She did.
But yeah, loved the fan service of the little flashback to 3, flashback to Matt Smith. I thought that was so fun. And I just think that was such a great way to, like, in a Stolen Earth sense, have different plot points from the season tie into the finale in a satisfying way.
Yes, I agree as well. This sounds really bad, but I forgot they could bring in the Time Hotel. I wasn't thinking of that as something that had, like, set up anything else. I sort of thought that as its own isolated story. So that was really, really
Christmas
nice.
specials often are.
Yeah. Something else as well about those moments where you see bits of other rooms. So that account on YouTube of the Confession Dial, who expanded the clips of the Rani, as in, like, extended the dimensions. Do you know what I mean? Like, it made them widescreen. The person that the BBC commissioned to do that, because he does them so well on YouTube, same person who did the regeneration scenes in the War Games.
That one.
Yes. Had also expanded the clip of John Pertwee's era, and so I'm like, how have you done this? Like, I don't think this is AI, but maybe it is. But
I don't know. I hope not.
There's like 40% of the screen they've added, including like an entire Dalek that was not there.
Oh no, because they I think, as far as I'm aware from what I could see online, they brought in a Dalek prop for that scene, because there's a bit when you're looking at Anita and the Dalek passes her. I think they extended the shot and then added in a Dalek.
Yes, there's one as well, like back right, and you can only see like half of it, and they've added on the other half of the Dalek. And I'm like, how have you done that?
I don't know how they did
However, that kind of stuff was great. It's a shame that Anita was there. Someone did comment, like, pregnant Anita is reduced to holding the door open for an hour.
She literally could have made a door stop.
This cannot be all they had for her. And I did not like that they then gave her a line about, oh, by the way, he says hello, the boss. I was like, no, you were not the person
I
to
didn't mind
that
that,
line.
but if anything, it just made me feel sad that this is clearly setting something up for Shooty's third season that we didn't get.
That someone else would
I
pick up
don't
now.
like hangovers from different doctors. Like, I think 9 to 10 and 11 to 12 are the two best examples of, like, they're part of the same era. So, like, you have, like, the Paternoster gang still carrying on. You have Rose and the Tylers still carrying on. Like, I don't mind there being continual threads. But when it's so clearly written to be Shooty's third season...
The mystery needs to end.
The mystery needs to end. I'm like, okay, we're not going to find out who the boss is now.
And
I'm fine with that.
It just
Does the meat work in the Time Hotel?
It undermined her intentions for me as well. I was like, oh, are you a little bit evil? I don't really need that. I just don't need an evil Anita. I don't. I'm sorry. Anyway.
I hope it's not.
There was also this, so there's a bit of wonky logic starts to creep in for me. And I brought this up last week that I feel like the rules are kind of just literally made up as we go. This happens a few times in this episode that we add new rules throughout the story. Yeah. One of them is the day keeps resetting to thin out reality, which I think is simply not necessary, because apart from allowing a gaggy episode 7 cliffhanger, it just didn't need to happen. It just didn't need to happen because reality didn't need to, like, at the point that Omega comes back, everything's intact, like London's intact. So we almost never needed to reach the point of everything falling through the ground, apart from a gaggy episode 7 reveal. So when we start to get into this, like, it's reset hundreds of times, I'm then like, but at what point in the reset did Belinda and the Doctor come in? Have they always been there? Or have they done this loads of times? Also, if Ruby can remember it, can she only remember the last cycle, or can she remember many cycles?
I like the idea. See, that for me didn't bother me as much, because that felt like an expansion of this plot rather than adding something in. For me, I know we're jumping a bit ahead down a bit here, but it was the Rani's line where she was saying about how she survived Time War, and she was like, I saw it coming, the genetic explosion. I flipped my DNA, made a biological sidestep. This is you adding in extra
Things
crap to make it work. Like something to make it work. Whereas for this, I didn't mind the reset, because for me, I was like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Like, I thought maybe we go to the Underverse and then we have an episode like in the Upside Down, which weirdly got a shout out in this episode. Stranger Things is canonical to Doctor Who. So that didn't bother me so much. I like the idea that, you know, there were cycles of this without the Doctor and Belinda, but then we and they don't know how often they've been in there, because the Rani said in Wishworld she needed the data of a Time Lord to break the world apart. we don't know how long they were in there working the doctor. You know, Mrs. Flood said, it's at, 9 p.m. That's when he does his thinking time.
Yes, I guess it does lend that he's done it before, because how else would they know it was 9 p.m.? Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't mind that Ruby remembers, because it's not, part of me was like, does she remember because she hates Conrad so much she remembers? That felt a bit weak to me. No, it's because she's the only one on Earth who's lived through this time before because of 73 yards, which again, that was a satisfying connection to me, because I was like,
yeah.
It felt more satisfying than when they relied on 73 yards in Empire of Death. That felt tacked on, whereas this, I was like, that makes sense. She's lived through this reality before. So even if she forgets this day and she keeps resetting this day, she has lived this day before outside of the wish world, and that's what she's remembering.
She can feel it's wrong every time. I as well, I really like that 73 yards has given Ruby a new ability, and like it's stuck with her. And we don't really know, like, in a way that I enjoy the mystery of it, that like how or why she's developed this ability. Like she became the woman under the tree, the terrifying woman, to lead herself to avoid stepping on the the fairy circle, and in doing all these things has had such a bizarre paranormal experience that she can now see when things are wrong in the universe, sometimes more so than the Doctor can, which is I actually quite like, I must say.
Yeah, it's world building for me.
It is. Yeah. The Ranis. I did laugh at, you were meant to follow him and say, oh, right, I had Christmas off. And so did you. We're the same person. So that was fun. That got a really good laugh in the cinema as well. It does, however, add, I'm sorry to do this, it does add another question for you about bigeneration, because if you do share a consciousness, being eaten is a fate that the Rani should know about, because Mrs. Flood has witnessed it.
This is where bigeneration crumbles for me, because the Rani's bigeneration is so different to how they treated the Doctor's regeneration, where it's almost like they are two completely separate people. And because Mrs. Flood is before the Rani should remember being Mrs. Flood. And I know they're often just like, wibbly wobbly timey-wimey, but like, she should know what happens. Like, her being there is enough to be like, you know how this plays out, so you can help me avoid all this stuff. So to me, there's no good enough explanation, certainly not within the episode, as to why it falls that way. And I love Anita Dobson. At first, I was like, I'm sad that Mrs. Flood survived and the Rani died. But to be honest, out of the two of them, I was more entertained by Mrs. Flood. I want Mrs. Flood as the Rani, and I want to see her continue, because I just like her character. I just don't feel like her character is very Rani-esque.
I agree. I don't think there's a need for Mrs. Flood and the Rani, the real Rani, the other Rani. I think this is like, I don't know what I'm basing this on nothing. I have a feeling that the Rani was a late addition to the story, and that Mrs. Flood was maybe meant to be somebody else, because I just don't think that the clues are there for her to be the Rani. And her fourth wall breaks, the way she reveals herself to Cherry in the previous season, for me, like, it doesn't match. So not convinced that was always the plan. I think that might have been like a late thing, which is a little bit of a shame for Anita Dobson. I think she was maybe trying to unlock some kind of other ancient god, but maybe it wasn't Omega in the first place.
I love the idea of, if we're going to have like a one-off Christmas special or something coming up with Billie Piper, I love the idea of having, while we're still within this era, a one-off episode of Mrs. Flood trying to change her Time Lord biology or something to separate herself from that future generation. So she's the dominant Rani and she survives, and she has to do all these experiments or something that end up experimenting on herself. Maybe that induce a regeneration, I don't know, but that cut the cycle and it severs. So that Rani almost never existed anymore. Like, she has separated herself from that Rani because she knows that's her fate. She knows she's going to get eaten by Omega, and that she has a Rani-focused single story, which is about experimenting on herself to sever herself from a future generation. I think that's an interesting story.
Yeah, if she's someone who could change her biology, that's quite fun, like to make herself regenerate in a different direction.
Yeah.
An interesting Christmas special, but nonetheless.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a Christmas special, but like a one-off special. Like,
Merry Christmas.
No, but she could say like, I'm not having Christmas off this year.
No, yeah. I mean, do it as a post-credit. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know about killing the Punjabi killing the Punjabi Rani. Quite a mouthful. within the first 20 minutes and having her eaten when she was quite a strong character in herself was a bit of an anticlimax for all the build. Like for all this, we're the Rani, like, and it being such a big reveal. She she turned up, she provided exposition, she died.
And then she died. I just think they should have treated the Rani like the Master, where they are big enough of a bad to be the big bad of their own story. And I think that Archie Punjabi is such an incredible actress, and Mrs. Flood, Anita Dobson, is such an incredible actress, that they did a disservice to both of them in the way that they treated them. I think there was a lot of potential in the Rani's return. You and the listeners know how long I've been on the Bring Rani Back train, and I feel like that potential was wasted here. I think Mrs. Flood was an interesting enough character in herself that she didn't have to be the Rani. And I think that Archie Punjabi would have been an interesting enough Rani that she didn't need to share that with 2 other Time Lords in her story. 3 Time Lords if you count the Doctor.
Yes, I agree. I think it was crowded. And so she had to die.
And so she had to die.
Yes.
I did like the Mel and Rani reunion, though. I did like we had that moment.
I did like that moment. For me, that moment, however, did pale horribly compared to, say, Sarah Jane and Davros.
Oh, like,
it was so like, Mel,
sure,
Bush,
yeah.
I can't believe you're alive. I don't even care if you are alive. Like,
but I did like Mel saying, she's like, I never thought you'd survive because I thought a little princess like you could never live. And the Mel's like, I never thought of you once. I really liked that.
You thought of me every night. Like, it was okay.
I get what you mean. It felt like 2 people reading dialogue to each other.
Very much. We'll get onto that scene, but like it was awkward blocking, awkward dialogue, and ultimately their Mel has nothing more to do with her. That was it.
Yeah.
So that was a bit underwhelming for me. On to daughter Poppy. We must talk about Poppy. So quite early in, we have Anita say, but your daughter isn't real. And the Doctor says, how dare you? How dare you? I found the Doctor's reaction here. Now, I understand this. The Doctor just knows that Poppy is real. And when Belinda and the Doctor step into the Time Hotel, they're free of the wish, they're in real time, but they can feel and they can see that Poppy is real, and they know that Poppy is their daughter. This, for me, I'm like, you're both being very naive. You both should be able to turn around and go, this is weird, right? Like, this is weird, right? Like, I don't have a daughter, but she is my daughter. But they're like, nope, that's my daughter. And he's like, isn't it great? And she's like, it's wonderful. Like, I found that very strange. I don't know why they know she's real and why they wouldn't believe in the context that they've just lived inside a false reality, that she isn't some kind of a trick or a hangover or a bargaining chip. But the bit that really made me feel quite was she specifically is like, we've had a baby. And it feels so wrong to me, like so wrong, logistically quite mental, and also just a little bit sick to just be like, we've had a baby. I was like, yeah, but you've kind of had it with your gay best friend.
And you've also like non-consensually been like, you've non-consensually, both of parties, I mean, the Doctor and Linda, have been forced into having this child.
You've been forced to have a baby. You don't remember having the baby. Like, I believe you have this love and attachment to this child, but you have no history with this baby. Like, it's not like, you know, like in any sense that it might be from you. Like, what do you mean it's your baby? Like, it doesn't really go into any depth to explore what it means to have a child be your own. You know, like an adopted baby, there's a relationship that's grown between, you know, an adopter and the baby because of the care that's given and the love that's there. Like, you know, a biological child, there's a different relationship too, but like also there's like, you know, the love that you grow, and there's the relationship you do grow. And like for them, it's just suddenly a fact, like this is our baby and we will lay down our lives for it. But like, what are they feeling to know that?
I just think for me, the reason this feels so starkly gross is because in Wishworld, they make a real point of the whole, you know what happens to women, good little girls to good little wives to good little mothers.
Yeah.
And Belinda at the beginning of the season was so headstrong in who she was, confrontation with the Doctor, interesting career, unique living situation, unique history. And it feels like because they've kind of pushed this baby onto her and the Doctor, she is now only a mother and exclusively a mother. And to this story, that is all she has. I know we're caveating a bit to Belinda in this, but like they have turned this character that I feel like, especially in the Robot Revolution and Lux, had so much potential, and I fell for her so quickly. And I just feel so robbed of that character because they turned her into a mother, and they literally put Belinda in a box. They put her in a box. And for her to have this baby, like you said, they don't know. This could be a trick. The Satan pit gets a shout out in this episode. It could be a trick from the devil. They don't know. But they've decided that because they remember that she's their child, she is their child. That'd be like me waking up for a dream being like, I remember that I hooked up with Tom Ellis last night. So me and Tom Ellis had sex. I did.
That's it.
And I'm like, no, that didn't happen. You don't have a baby. And
you don't have a baby. We saw you don't have a baby because we met you, know that. Belinda. We know your story. We've met the students.
It just feels like we've now got this brainwashed companion that the Doctor has just forcibly told, oh, you have a baby. And she's like, you're right. I did have a baby this whole time.
But I think it's that change in relationship as well, where like suddenly there's this almost romantic undertone to the way they look and speak to each other. But it's such a whiplash from like, she was kind of started the season with this really strong perspective of, actually you're quite dangerous and we just saw Sasha die and I should be wary of you. And, oh, destiny. Is that what you think this is, destiny? Well, let me tell you, I'm not an adventure. You're not going to scan my DNA without my consent. You're going to get me
and then
home.
He scans Poppy's DNA without her consent.
And then he scans her DNA at the end without consent. And this time it's fine. She smiles because it's okay, because you're wonderful and they should have told you before. And actually, I love you. And actually, she says by the end, you're maybe the most wonderful man I've ever met. And all of this happening within 8 episodes. It
feels like the Doctor warped her life to make, I want this storyline where the Doctor's fucking evil because it feels like he warped her life to make her think he's incredible and forced her to become a person that she wasn't before. Oh, it's all really icky to make sure it makes sense.
It's very icky. It's really, really icky. And I'm sure someone's articulated it better than this, but there's something that really feels like a violation of it. I think there's this too. Children, babies, childbirth and carrying a baby, is such a... There's obviously other kinds of... You can have babies that aren't biologically your children and they can still be your children that you love in the same way. Obvious thing to caveat. But the trauma of having a child on a woman's body is so significant. It's so huge to have a baby. And I just find something about oh, I've had a baby and I've always had something's really weird about it. Something's so violent about it. I don't like it.
I think for me, and this is again another issue with the reshoots, in the restructuring of the story, I think there is something very interesting and poetic about this story being originally written for Ruby. And I'm theorizing here. I've not read the original scripts. I'm not Mr. Russell T. I don't know. But in the very first episode of Space Babies, Poppy, Captain Poppy, the blueprint for all this, kept saying to the Doctor and Ruby, Mummy and Daddy here, Mummy and Daddy here. And the Doctor even says oh, I wish we were, but we're not your Mummy and Daddy. And let's say that, and I love Belinda as a character. I'm really sad with what they've done with this episode, but let's say that Belinda never exists and this was the Doctor and Ruby throughout both seasons. And so they wake up together in the wish world. They're suddenly Mummy and Daddy to baby Poppy, as they previously wished, and they live out this life. And Ruby is a foundling. And now there's this baby Poppy who they've realised didn't exist but does. She is a foundling in itself. And I really like the line in this episode where Ruby says to the Doctor, I was lost and you were the only one that remembered and you fought for me to come back. And I like the idea that if it was her baby, and maybe let's say the Doctor didn't remember, that she would push to be like, no, I remember she was real, so she was real. In the same way you remembered I was real, so I am real. We have to get our daughter back. And then something happens, really probably time-wise, because let's be honest, you're never going to put a cot in the TARDIS in that way. But Ruby ends up with the baby at the end. And I'm not saying it's necessarily hers. I like the idea that it becomes adopted by Carla because Ruby's not a mother. Ruby's 20 at this point. But that Ruby brings this foundling home to the Sunday home, which is what happens in this episode originally. Well, it happens with Desiderium. The baby ends up in the household. I like the idea that Carla and Ruby and the Sundays adopt Poppy, and Poppy Sunday becomes a member of the family. And that feels like a full circle moment where if Belinda never existed, Ruby decides to stay home with her family, with her newfound mum, and Poppy, and they're like, look, we might not be her biological mum, but she will be our family. I will be her mother. And that has some poetic justice. The Doctor leaves her there, that's their decision, moves on. And it's a shame that we lost that because this version of where it's Belinda's daughter just feels really icky in a way that I can't explain.
It's really icky. I agree. Even in the story with Ruby, something about it being her child is strange. There being a child that's been forgotten and fallen out of the universe that was real, that has been created as a concoction of their wishes and dreams, and it's there and it's, attached to them in some way, like it's our wishes and our dreams. But there's something about it being like, it's my baby. I don't know. There's something funny about it.
I know.
And you're right. It feels like this is a good time to bring this in. This comes later in the story, but where it almost becomes obvious that this was not written with Belinda in mind is when Belinda is put in a box. She's literally put in a box for a large part of the story.
They put her in a box.
They put her in a box. And I understand it. Creating a box outside of time and space, like, it's a Schrodinger's box.
Put Poppy in there.
Right. Well, we can't have Poppy staying there forever in hell, because that would be quite scary. If she's in limbo forever on her own without her mother, that is actually quite scary. I do understand that point. And lovely to put Susan's genius to work. Like, I love that Susan is like rushing to be like, stabilize those couplings. And they're like, rushing to build a zero room for her. And which is but mad for someone who was like basically just a tech genius a year ago. Like, this is like, it's like the owner of like Adaby deciding like, actually, by the way, I can build like a room that is outside of time and space. It's like, yeah, sure, why not? Okay, Mark Zuckerberg. But it was that moment that you sort of realize what's happening. She's like, I can't help you in this battle. My battle's in there. And there's a worse line, which was, the doctor says, I was meant to meet you, Belinda, so that Poppy can live. And then with that, they go into the box. And again, it's that changing of the relationship that we began with, which was like, had this lovely friction to it, which was always really, I think, supposed for me to return to, it's been a ride. But life in the TARDIS, it's not for me. Like, thank you for getting me home safe. I have a life here and I'm happy. All love to you. Be well.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
But ta-ta. Like, for me, that's a lovely ending. Like,
and that's
you.
fine.
But like,
Dan wanted to go home. Why can't Belinda?
But be careful. But be careful. Like, because you need someone. That someone's not me, but you need someone. Anyway, something like that. But there was a moment as well where we cut to, there's like all this fighting outside. There's the bone beast, the doctor's on a hover bike, and then we suddenly cut to the inside of the box, and it's like cold silence, which is not meant to be funny.
Oh, it was so, we were all cackling.
The audience in the theatre just immediately laughed. And it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be kind of sad and terrifying. Like, they don't know what's happening outside. They don't know if they're in there forever. So it was a silly move to put Belinda in a box.
We were kind of joking about it in the story and the ending, because we thought they were going to like Tegan her, where she's just locked in the TARDIS for the whole episode. And we were so glad that isn't what happened. And I just feel like it's just so obvious to me that this episode was written with one companion in mind originally, in its original draft, I mean, where it feels like even when they're in the same scene together, Ruby and Belinda don't both need to be there. It really frustrates me, because when they announced that Belinda was joining the team, they were like, all three of them, the trio, the Doctor needs the three of them in the TARDIS together, and they're only in the TARDIS together once. It's after the conflict's resolved. And they literally had to get Belinda out of the way to caveat towards Ruby, to move the conversation to Ruby, to let Ruby have her moment with Conrad, because this, at its heart, is more of a Ruby story. One little thing I loved the return of Project Indigo. Did you clock that in the cinema?
I did clock the return of Project Indigo. I liked it. And I was also like, at this point, it's not a scary technology. They've had time to refine it. And it was like, don't press yellow. And she pressed it. And she's like, woo, that works. So that was fun. It was like,
scatter into atoms. Martha's dead.
Martha's down. It was like no longer a scary experimental technology. It also it's adding more and more to the fact that UNIT is probably more powerful than it should be. I'm like, they have a teleport, they have a time window, they have God knows what in the basement, they have lasers coming out of the shard. They like, I was like,
the building can spin around. And
yeah, like the UNIT story should ultimately conclude that Kate Stewart is usurped and someone else takes over, and we realize just how dangerous this is without a level head in charge.
Yeah,
but a welcome return.
Yeah, no, I welcome Return and Ruby, and I feel we got some really good Ruby stuff, and I really like the conversation with Conrad. If anything, Ruby was too nice to him. I would have killed the man. But I really liked that she had that moment where she was the one to take Desiderium, and she was the one to kind of like put an end to the wish.
Yes.
And but then, and this is how much I wonder is like off screen or on screen. When we have the scenes in the TARDIS where it's just the Doctor and Ruby, like they get their little reunion in UNIT, but like when it's those little moments of just the Doctor and Ruby, it feels like there's like a really weird friction.
Something's very wrong.
Something's very wrong. And like even, and I'm sure this is deliberate, obviously, when it's the Doctor, Belinda, and Ruby, the Doctor and Belinda are like, yap, and Ruby's just kind of stood there. Even before Poppy disappears, she's on the outside looking in. And I know that'll be deliberate, but like, it's so uncomfortable because the Doctor's farewell to Ruby at the end of the last season was so heartwarming, heartfelt. Like, you haven't seen the last of me, you've changed me forever. I love you so much. Well, I didn't say I love you, but certainly felt it. And then when he finally actually properly reunites her in this episode,
do you know what he says? Do you know what he says to her? So everyone's coming back into unit. The gang is back together. We can come into that scene in a minute because we need to talk about Mel's hair as well. But there's this moment everyone comes back together. And he gives Ruby the same response that he gives to Shirley. They just have a hug. And the thing he says to Ruby, do you know what he says to Ruby? The only thing he says to Ruby, after all this time apart, after Joy to the World, after looking at that phone and thinking, should I pick it up? I regret that I didn't say I love you. I regret that I left her behind. I regret that I let her leave the door in tears. I regret that I didn't look back. He says, you're blonder. And that's all he says. And then on the last scene, right before, it feels like a good time to bring this in, not the whole final scene, but like before he hops in the TARDIS and he has his final scene with Ruby, she kind of works this out. She's panicking and she's like, I'm begging you to believe me. You know, someone's missing.
You've got a daughter and she's called Poppy.
And everyone's gaslighting her. It will go on to like Belinda saying that's actually quite offensive. And I was like, sorry, what's actually going on here on this day? She gets back in the TARDIS and he goes off in the TARDIS and she's sad. She's holding Belinda's hand. And that's the last time we see Ruby Sunday. Now, how would I fix this? I was thinking about this. There needed to be something here where before he gets in the TARDIS, and we had plenty of time to say this, Ruby, I'm really sorry I doubted you. Like, you're right. You see something the rest of us don't see. And you're right. Like, I did save those people and I did remember you. And someone is missing. We're down one. It didn't need to be that. In a way, we're all your children. Cut that. Keep. And listen, Ruby, last time I left you, I never told you I love you so much. And I never told you how wonderful you are. Echo back Belinda's words that she told you. Echo them back now to Ruby.
See,
or... even better than this, here's a better build. He does what he does. He goes in, someone's missing, goes into the TARDIS, slams the door, runs in behind him, Ruby Sunday, and says, no, Doctor, wait, what are you doing? I think I know where you're going. I think I know what you're planning. Are we going to see you again? And it's, well, you know, I've got to do something to, no, wait, because if you're going to go, and he says, no, wait, before I go, let me tell you something. And then he says this, he says, I love you. They have a moment, they have an embrace, she cries, and he says, I will see you again. And then he flies away and he does what he does. That is the way I would have ended that part of the story.
See, I was convinced we were going to get an The End of Time Part 2 moment where he says goodbye to Belinda, but before, because it seems like he like is somewhat in control of when he regenerates, like he on the hand and blows it away. Poor 13 just sat there licking the ice cream with the glowing hand. And I feel like he says goodbye to Belinda because, to be honest, his relationship with Belinda isn't as strong as his relationship with Ruby. That's the conclusion I've come to. Yeah. And I thought he was going to say goodbye to Belinda, and I get they didn't want to underwhelm the audience in the fact that Belinda was the companion this season, but Ruby was also the companion this season. She had a whole solo episode, she was integral to the 2-part finale, and I wanted a moment where he, you know, we're in the Sunday's flat or we're in a cafe somewhere, maybe Ruby's like working somewhere in a job, and she sees the TARDIS appear and the Doctor comes back for her, and we get that moment that you said where she's like, you know, the moment where Wilf is like, oh, see, I told you you'd be all right. Like Ruby could be like, see, I told you everything will be fine. I've spoken to Belinda, she's got that kid, you know, her daughter Poppy. And the Doctor says like, thank you, Ruby, like it was because of you, and you're right, I did lose you that day and I would never lose a life for a life. And it just, it felt so upsetting that we didn't get any kind of proper goodbye.
I'm completely certain that the way that he tells Belinda, I love you, was meant to be a mirror that was back at Ruby Sunday, was not at Belinda. Because what does he say to the 13th Doctor? He says, I love you, Doctor. And she says, I don't say things like that. And he says, that's why you got me. And I'm like, that's a crazy thing to say because you still haven't said it back to Ruby. So what? I'm like, why are you saying that?
So what's going on?
So what's going on? He's like, you know what? You actually never say it to Yaz, and that's why I'm here. And I'm like, but you didn't say it to Ruby.
I wonder if they had done a third season, whether we would have had two, but it feels like we probably would have got two Belindas. Or would we have gone back to Ruby? Or would we have had secret third option, Penny Carter?
Penny Carter, secret third option. Can we come back to Unit Tower for a moment?
Of course.
May we? So for me, this was back on one of these really high moments, right? When everyone's assembling at unit and the doors are being thrown open, real time is bleeding in, and it's Mr. Smith, what are you wearing? And he's like, I am a queer man and I'm wearing a skirt. This is the future.
Hi, gay. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride Month, said Mr. Smith. And I just love that. Like, I'm wearing the future, blasting real time in through the doors. All of the mugs shatter at once. Like, doubt floods into the room. I'm wearing a suit. I'm wearing tweed. I'm wearing nylon. And then the blinks. Remember last episode, I was like, by the way, the blinks is in the box. You're like, no, wait. I was like, yes. And then the box blows open. I was like, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Rose, I had to laugh. Rose appearing back on screen. It was like, oh, I didn't
in the same costume.
Same clothes. I was like, how long have you been gone? And it was like, I understood the point, and the point is so well intentioned, and all of this is well intentioned also, by the way. Like, I think everything you have to assume is well intentioned. He wanted to say something because he does center minorities in his stories, Russell T Davies. He has something he wants to say. He wants to be positive and inclusive. And he says, you didn't even exist in this world, Rose, because you're trans. And in his reality, like, you can't even imagine your reality as a trans woman. So you didn't even exist. And I understand the point he's making with that. However, beyond that point and prior to this point, Rose only really exists in this world to be trans and to exist at set dressing. She doesn't really have a role to play.
I mean, it's a similar critique that we had with Shirley's character last week where, and I completely agree with you, I think all inclusivity is good and a positive step forward for cinematography, film, storytelling, TV. However, you should have a fully fleshed character who their disability or they're being trans, or they're being queer, or they're being any type of way diverse should be in addition to the fully fledged character you already have. And I love that he made the book that Conrad was reading look so close to Harry Potter, because it is a very deliberate commentary on she who should not be named the mold witch. The mold witch. Oh my God. We after this episode, we were at a pub in the middle of town, and it's right by the Cursed Child Theatre. And I was like, I think I was on the phone to you or I was on the phone to somebody else, and I was like, we're by the theatre. It's the one with the mold witch. The mold witch's theatre. And they were like, I know where you are.
I know what you mean.
It feels like a very deliberate choice to have that comment on Conrad's transphobia, having read a book so similar to Harry Potter. And I like that, but I would have liked it more had Rose had literally anything to do in this episode, or any other costume in this episode, other than the one which you wore in the last finale, and did nothing for the rest of the episode.
Absolutely.
Call your mum, call your uncle. You know that other Time Lord who has a load of regeneration energy and needs to die at some point? Call him.
It's the same, and again, it's all well-intentioned, but it's the same as what we talked about last season. Dot and Bubble being racism for white people. It's looking at disability through a lens that makes sense for able-bodied people. It's about looking at trans stories for cis people, like in ways that, like, you know, and so it's, I think, always told in this way that's quite shallow.
Yeah.
And this is an example of that. Anyway, everyone comes back in unit. Mel appears driving onto the top floor, which ultimately was like camp enough that it didn't really matter, that it didn't make sense. I was like, sure, whatever.
I like the idea that maybe she like the Doctor did with the anti-grav bike, she might have an anti-grav scooter and she like drove up the side of the building onto the thing. Like that didn't, some people are like, did she bring that into a lift? I'm like, shut up, doesn't matter.
She can also just bring it in the lift, fine, whatever. Like it's a helipad.
The perm. People are like, when did she get a perm? I'm like, okay, I'm glad of it.
I gotta say the perm.
Do you not like the perm?
I'd forgive the perm if it was a good perm. I thought that wig was rough. I whispered, you know that picture of Jennifer Lopez? And it's captioned, she looks crazy as hell. I'll say no more. I'll say no more.
I didn't mind it.
I found that tricky. And then also she's like, I've been a housewife. And all the tweets this week were like, well, you haven't. That's not true. That's not true.
Melanie Bush.
I understood what she meant. But yes, in this scene, it was funny. So the Rani then appears. There's quite odd blocking in this. Everyone's kind of, this happened in the last series as well. In the set, everyone kind of faces the front. And they're all like lined up in this way that everyone's very neatly positioned for the camera. You know, all looks almost like a bit too clean and a bit too tidy. And then there's a bit of an artificial turn taking of dialogue. The Rani turns up and then there's more exposition and she starts kind of info dumping for the room, but in a way that doesn't make sense. She's like, takes a lot of work, spying on you both, pinning it down to May the 24th. And I was like, pinning what down, Mrs. Flood? Pinning what down to May the 24th? Like, actually, what do you mean?
Yeah, like I was saying before about her whole, like, I split my DNA and I knew this was coming. I didn't mind, and again, by this point in the episode, I was still having fun. I am just aware there's a lot of talk, don't show. I don't know what I'm trying to explain, but like it felt kind of like saying things for the sake of saying things. And I feel like in the Wish world, when the Rani was giving all the exposition and it was a very like standard villain speech, it made sense because then she said, I'm not just giving you exposition. I need you to know this because I need you to doubt the system and blah, 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 blah. What I like to believe, and which I do think is the intention of that scene, is that the Rani genuinely doesn't hate the Doctor, which would line up with first my story in Mark of the Rani, less so Time of the Rani, where she kind of wants revenge, where she's like, I'm the last time lady, you're the last time lord. Don't you want our species to come back? You could help me with this. I actually don't want to fight you. I just want to kind of get on with this because I think we both have a shared interest.
We have a shared interest here, yeah.
And the Doctor clearly has seen what the Time Lords could become and knows certainly what the Time Lords from Omega would be like, and is like, absolutely not. But she's like, well, I would be ruling them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So by then, I guess.
Which is then naive because then she gets eaten and it's clear she's out of her depth. Yes, I think. Yes. I think, the characterization was okay. They're over-explaining of, I mean, they needed to explain why can't they use the Doctor's DNA? And the answer is they can use the Doctor's DNA and therefore bringing back Omega is redundant and therefore Omega is not the right person to bring back or that this is not the right motivation for the Rani.
They didn't need to bring him back.
So the way that they then work around that is to decide that all the Time Lords are infertile. Some people, I think, were reading this as like, it's great, it builds on the tragedy of the Time Lords. I was like, I just don't think that's true because the way it's described in Day of the Doctor was ultimately that there is no like moment hitting button that never happened because the Doctor famously saved Gallifrey by moving it. Like it just moved. The Daleks fired on themselves. Everyone thought that there was a big bang, but there wasn't. Like the Time Lords were always safe. The second time in the Timeless Children, there was I forgot what it was called. There was a biological weapon of some kind. The Master
I was looking this up earlier. Like, yes, the Master deployed a weapon, but it's never actually explicitly explained what happened.
It is actually explained. There's an explainer in the script that basically says it will kill all biological matter on this planet. That's it. But
that's after he destroyed the Time Lords, because that's the weapon they used to destroy the Cybermen.
I think that's the same one he used both times.
Was it?
Oh, maybe it's not. So maybe I'm getting it wrong.
To my knowledge, I mean, hey, dear listener, we love your comments. Let us know. To my knowledge, he destroyed Gallifrey and didn't specifically say how he did it. But then he had the like matter destroying weapon, and that was what. Do you remember the old guy from Dairy Girls that came in at the end and saved the Doctor because the Doctor was going to do it, and that destroys like all DNA on a planet. That's what they used to try and stop the Cybermasters.
So I'd assume that's what the Master used the same time, and I think others did too. Also, it means the Master, for some reason, made himself infertile. It was just a very strange position for like both of them to be standing up and just announce as if the Doctor had ever known this. Like, we are infertile. And I was like, but also didn't the 13th Doctor at some point then in her life feel that she had suddenly become infertile in the giant like cellular explosion? Like, was she not up until that point? But also, beyond this, there was all this talk. Last season, the Doctor and Boom begs the AI computer and is like father to father, dad to dad is how he talks, unless he's lying. And in The Doctor's Daughter, it talks so much about like, I had children once and I had a family and every time I think of them, I can feel that pain. And
listen, there is a way of explaining this where it's just that Time Lords, chosen family is very important to Time Lords. And so you say I have children, you say I have a granddaughter. He could have just been an elderly figure in Gallifrey. A young girl became very joined to him. She started calling him grandfather and chosen family becomes family. That is an explainer, sure. But I don't think it is as strong as an explainer as the fact that the Doctor had brothers and sisters and a mother and children.
And in the previous season, he said, in The Legend of Ruby Sunday, I haven't had a daughter yet and I haven't had a granddaughter yet.
I just think it's not as, and I didn't like that either at the time, if I'm honest, but I just think that it's not, you lose a lot of the sincerity and the intention behind episodes like The Doctor's Daughter, where there is a family lost. And I'm not trying to like lessen the importance of chosen family, but I just think it's a really random thing that was added for plot reasons in this episode that has really weird ramifications going forward that like, I don't think was necessary.
No.
And then there's the whole argument, like, well, why don't you just take Poppy? Surely Poppy is the explanation, like the fix. And then she's like, oh, she's half human. And I thought in my head, this is where I thought they were going with it. I thought when they bring Poppy back in this finale, like in the end of the episode, the Doctor goes out the TARDIS, having done whatever he's going to do, and he sees her stood on the edge of an abyss and sees a woman pick her up and take her away. And we realise she's Time's Child because the Eighth Doctor said, I'm half human. And that kind of like, we weren't really sure if that was retconned or not. But I love the idea that Poppy becomes the timeless child, and then you get this lovely full circle moment instead of lumbering off onto now Mummy Belinda.
So the Doctor like saved themselves in that moment.
Yeah, but by giving the life for a life, they let the Doctor live.
Imagine the fallout of that one. Can you imagine?
I think that would have been incredible. I think that would have been
fine
such a good way. Yes, I'm sure lots of people would have had stuff to say about it, but all it means is that like the Doctor was saving themselves. She is still a descendant or a predecessor of Susan, and we just get a little bit more lore as to and yes, people wouldn't like knowing that the Time Lords were invented by Conrad's wish, but whatever. Okay, fine.
Oh my God. Okay. There is a real gut punch moment in the scene where Poppy is vanishing. This was done really effectively, I think. Like the sad music comes on. I'm pretty sure the music, and it plays earlier in the episode, it's the same as when the 12th Doctor is dying and he looks up at the stars and he's like, oh,
I
pity.
think so. Josh tapped me while we were watching and he was like, that's 12th song from oh God, The Doctor Falls. Oh, no,
yes.
It's good.
It came on a couple times and I was like, and also, which is funny, right? He regenerates. He's like, pity, stars. I hope there'll be stars. Where does he regenerate this time? Out in space, looking at a star. That's kind of nice. That's kind of nice, Murray Gold. We see you. We see you. Series 10 soundtrack confirmed. So that was beautiful. And it was sad because it was Ruby watching it happen as the only one who can perceive. And it's like the other two are in this kind of, Belinda and the Doctor are kind of in this...
like trance almost.
They're in a trance. That's what it is. They're in trance. And this thing keeps getting smaller and smaller in front of us. It takes a moment to realize what's happening. And then suddenly the Doctor just like, smacks his hands together and it vanishes into thin air. And they are then just really doubting, like, what are you talking about, Ruby? And it's driving me insane because of the way that they are about it. It's almost like not only is the wish gone, but it's almost like there's something that's come over them to make them want to forget it too, which I'm not sure how I feel about that. It kind of bothered me. There's something that feels really cold because there's been no introduction between the girls. There's no been like Ruby, Belinda, and Belinda and the Doctor have kind of like coupled up. There's a planet called New Delhi in the future. Oh, we are so going. I can't believe I didn't want to travel with you. I knew I'd get you in the end. And I was like, what's happened? What's happened here? What's happened here, please? I want to see planets and galaxies. Oh, mate, we're going to travel. We're going to have the best of times. I was like, this is a really scary 180 on Belinda Chandra. I don't know who this is. This is scaring me. But it almost felt like Ruby was begging them, like, there was someone here. There was a baby and you've forgotten her. And they are just like, anyway, planet Miss Belinda Chandra, got to throw this out there. I was like, are you hearing what she is saying to you? Poppy, yeah, there was a girl called Poppy on a different planet a long time ago. Do you remember? Are you a little bit stupid? Me and my friend Belinda are going to go flying away. So we're going to take you home, okay? Like, I love the coat scene. Effective. The relationship dynamics between the three of them, hate it, put it in the bin. What is going on?
No, I get that. For me, it's almost two separate things. So just talking about the coat folding scene, I think, honestly, it is one of my favourite things Doctor Who has ever done. It is something, I always joke about being the showrunner and what I would do with the show. I would never think to do something like that. And I think when people talk about like Russell losing his source, I think that is a prime example of where it's wrong. I'm not saying completely wrong, but where it's wrong. Where the Doctor and Belinda having it's how the conversation changes from, because as soon as they're like, oh yeah, we've got to put it, this place isn't baby proof, we've got to put in monitors and cover the railings and stuff. And I was like, okay, well, it's clear we're getting rid of the baby because this isn't happening. Like the TARDIS isn't becoming a playpen. Yeah. And then there's a bit like, oh, this place is always cold, but suddenly it's too hot. That's so weird. And that was the reason to take off the coat. And then when they start folding it and they're having a conversation and you're almost like not even meant to be listening to their conversation, because it starts as like, oh, where should we show Poppy? Where should we go with Poppy? And Ruby, you can see she's kind of bittersweet happy. And in that moment, she seems like, that used to be me. Like, I used to be you. And I'm fine being at home. I chose to be home, but I'm sad because I'm not you anymore. And that's fine. But then as they start talking, the conversation shifts from where are we taking Poppy to where do you want to go, Belinda? And I want to go here. And then when Ruby like looks down at the coat folding into something less and less significant, you kind of see the panic in her eyes, and like she's trying to work out what's happening. She can see it happening real time, and the doctor kind of like, you know, dusts his hands and gives Belinda a hug, and then Ruby turns and suddenly Poppy's gone. And I agree with you, and I think it's accentuated by what happens later with Belinda's character, where she suddenly is Mother Belinda. But in that moment, this is where I get frustrated with the reshoots, because I think there's a world in which there's a really gorgeous scene where, to try and help them, Ruby's trying to convince them, like, there was a baby here, what are you talking about? And the doctor knows, the doctor remembers,
can see
but he's
what
trying
she
to
sees.
keep a brave face. He sees what she sees, but he's trying to put on the brave face for Belinda. But what we got was this really weird tone where the doctor then tries to, like you said, like act like she's stupid, and it's like, no, I think you got a bit muddled up. And that line works so well in a world where he's trying desperately to think on his feet, and
Because he's manipulating her.
he's manipulating her, but he's trying to manipulate her into being like, no, let's not tell her. And then he gives her that wink that I don't think was really meant to be in this edit. But yeah, I think it was a really gorgeous scene that then became something a bit icky because of where it goes in its direction.
Yes, I agree. It being what it became, where the two of them are meant to be the parents, it just felt odd. That
it was the perfect ending for Poppy. Like, when I thought that was the end, I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
What a perfect, beautiful tying of the bow for Poppy. Like, they wanted her to be real so badly, but the universe said no, Doctor. You screamed into the universe, and the universe said no. Like, I like the idea that they tried so hard, but the universe said no. And you have to be okay with that.
Yes, which is tragic. It's a tragic end. And then I think, it would have been, I think, more effective had they lost her, the idea of the final wish being gone. And that may be representing something. And that, you know, if the tragedy for the Doctor is he won't have his own children, and that's what he's scared about, is that, I don't know. Anyway, there's something in that. Then they get back to UNIT, and they can detect all these mistakes in the universe, one of which is they say the border between Norway and Sweden has changed, and that's where people started theorizing actually online. They were like, Bad Wolf Bay has moved. But Ruby's like convincing, she's like, what? So my memory is the glitch. I'm wrong. I'm one of these things that doesn't remember. And my memory's faulty, and she's having to work so hard to convince him. There was something in this moment, particularly around Belinda going, actually, it's quite offensive how you're suggesting I have a baby I don't remember. I was like, this is weird. Like, this is weird. Like, there's something about the way this has been played that I do not like. And I think from this point on, we're now into reshoot territory.
Partly because Millie Gibson had a tan.
then they're like, hey, do you remember building a zero room, like a box for Belinda's to be in? While we, like, because we couldn't work out what his other character. She's like, oh yeah, I did build that plot device downstairs. But it's like an escape pod for everyone to get into. And it was like, yeah, sure, okay. And then they start to realize, like, okay, yeah, maybe there was another baby. You're right. Like that would kind of make sense that, like, she can remember something that we're forgetting. There are still glitches, right? Maybe we're not in the right universe quite yet. It's weird that they can see that all the other glitches are wrong, like, and remember it, but not remember this one thing. So I wasn't totally understanding that. And then it goes into, in a way, we're all your kids. And then for some reason the music goes on.
The children of time, Kate Stewart.
In a way, that we're in a way, we all sprung from your loins. Then the music swells, and it's da 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 at 300%.
Sounds like you were about to go into Anyone Can Fall.
Anyone can fall. And there's this gormless stare back from everyone in the room, including a weird lingering stare from the Colonel, as if he's in any way the Doctor's child in any sense. Like,
Mr. Ibrahim, you stay in your lane.
It's like, we're all your children. Ruby, Shirley, the Colonel. I was like, is this the assembled, like, children of the Doctor? Like, it was trying to do a series 4 thing, but it didn't quite, I think, hit like the biggest family in the universe for me.
I don't think it quite. For me, the biggest family in the universe moment was Anita coming back.
Yeah, that was lovely as well. I think on the message of this episode, it's again a bit muddled, and I think it's a victim of rewrites and changes. One is that we've forgiven Conrad, like, he just wasn't happy. He's in ableist, incel, misogynist, homophobe,
transphobe,
and everything else. But everything under the sun this guy can be, he is. But ultimately, he's also kind of kind. And he was changed by the doctor's horrible threat that he would die of a heart attack. And yes, he erased trans people from this world entirely and left the disabled people in the camps and forced queer people into heterosexual relationships. And yes, he abused Ruby and deceived her, and
but Conrad, this world could have been so much worse.
It could have been worse.
I'm like, yeah, like anything could be worse, but this was still pretty fucking shit.
I think Ruby did a very kind thing. Well, thank you for your input, Mel, who lived on her own and didn't really suffer anything. And then there's this other theme of children and babies, right? So children and babies. And this was a point going around on Twitter from like defenders of this episode. They were like, actually, there's a very clear theme in RTD2, a very clear message, and it's around the theme of children and babies and reuniting children. And of course, that's what the 15th Doctor did on his way out, is reunite a lost child. I was like, okay. The best I can
Where's
get...
the re in unite? They united for sure, but where's the re?
A brand new baby. The best I can get in terms of like what is the message this week, because normally it's quite obvious, is that it's something about the sanctity of every life. It's about we're down one. Even one baby missing is unacceptable. We have to find.
But then somebody else lived. They were like, "Oh, nice for so and so because he lived." So what? Did he die?
Well, this is it. We just blasted Omega into hell with the force of 1 billion supernovas, which should have also ricocheted the Doctor back and scolded him. He should have started firing that thing. And
then Earth explodes.
And Earth explodes. And also there's something I hate in that scene about like...
Oh, I didn't mind that.
But while he is firing a gun at something, I'm like, come
Listen,
on.
I'll get into... I've got a couple bits. You finish that and I'll rattle. I've got some bits.
He forgot about Rogue, who is still in hell, so never mind him, I guess. The Rani just got eaten, so we're like, we're down one. You're down 3, at least, by the way. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't really quite gather what the point is. There's something about gods. There's something about babies. None of it's really finished.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Conrad had a really weird redemption arc. I don't like in Wishworld that Mrs. Flood was like, you're the boy that wanted to make everything better. And I get that she's trying to like tell him what he wants here to make him feel special. But I didn't like that he got a redemption. I know we're not meant to. I think maybe it's a very nice thing. I don't like that. There's just a lot I don't like. And I don't think I have to like everything as a fan in this episode. And there was a lot I loved, obviously, but I didn't like that. One thing I did love was the bone creatures. I think they're a really fun addition that didn't need to exist. I feel like what we're meant to take away is that the Bone Palace was the TARDIS in disguise. Like,
yes, it was. Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot isn't really explained. We get the fact that the Mrs. Flood was zipping around time with that time ring, so we get that explained. But there is a lot not explained. So I like we got an explanation for the TARDIS being the Bone Palace. And I think the Bone creatures, one of my favourite bits in this episode was the war between the Bone people and Unit. I will say, Unit ends up smoking and like on fire. The bone creatures never quite got to it. They're always from a bit far away, walking towards them, and they're shooting them, but suddenly Unit's like half destroyed. I'm like, when did that happen? And I'm not sure that it did.
Lasers overheating that destroyed them.
Exactly. But yeah, with Omega, I really didn't like what they did with it, and I wish they hadn't put him in this episode. However, even in the cinema, right off the back of watching it, I was so quick to dismiss it. I was like, that was the moment for me where I started thinking, oh, this episode might not be so great overall. But I also don't even really see it as the same Omega that was from Classic Who. They have that line where, they say, oh, being in the underworld changes you and mutates you and turns you from a legend into something else. So I like the idea that, Omega got thrown into the underworld and then became a legend. And the legend of Omega became this weird mummy embodiment thing. Yeah. Kind of rotting, I don't love that he ate the Rani. I think it was a waste of the Rani, a waste of Omega. I kind of wish he hadn't been in it. I agree with you that, like, it's so funny that Russell made such a point being like, the sonic screwdriver shouldn't look like a gun, And then the resolution to this episode is the Doctor gets a huge gun and laser shoots him with the power of 1 billion supernovas. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's the solution for this episode. Like, guns are fine sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, Rogue is just such a Shooty Gatwa character that I don't think should River Song style zip to other Doctors. And it meant so much being the first like gay romance that the Doctor had on screen, like gay male, I mean.
Yeah.
And yeah, the fact that he's just stuck in hell dimension and who knows? We might get we'll get a Doctor Who magazine comic of him going back and saving. That's probably we'll get the Rogue Big Finish edition or something. But yeah, I just feel like with the fact that, and I think we'll get into the regeneration sort of ending now, with the fact that we now have this as a regeneration story, it just feels like there's so many ties, like the boss and like Rogue and this and that like have been left loose, and that doesn't sit well with me.
Because Billy Piper can't now free Jonathan Groff.
Jonathan Groff probably doesn't know who Billy Piper is.
But it's funny that he wasn't released this time, because he's like, I'm in the hell dimension, and the Doctor is like, Omega's in the underverse, otherwise known as hell. And I'm like, okay, so they're together. So, but they kind of just let like Omega slide halfway out, get stuck at the waist, push him back. You know what? Jonathan Groff might have been on the arse end of that, trying to get around him, but he just didn't get a chance. Like,
Doctor! Well, it was funny because in Unleashed, you see that I assumed he filmed that like on a green screen in New York, but he filmed it off the back of Rogue, like Unleashed filmed him. And he said to Shooty at the time, he was like, they've made me film this really weird scene talking about tables. I have no idea what that means, which means that obviously the seeds of this episode were that far back, but it also meant they weren't getting any new footage of Jonathan Groff, my friend. They had what they had.
We'll get you while we have you. That's what we'll do. And you know what? I think a lot of this is almost a victim of over planning. They planned 3 seasons where they should have planned 2, which is quite a funny situation to be in. The Bone Beasts were funny. I love the line, she's agitating the Bone Beasts. That for me is an all-timer for being horny.
I have seen someone who I know you have on Close Friends as well saying me when I post a thirst trap, they're agitating the bone beasts.
The visuals for the most part I think were also fantastic. London from the sky looked beautiful. Kate using a huge pirate ship steering wheel to maneuver unit is such absolute nonsense that I can actually forgive it because it's so silly. But my God,
that kind of stuff I love.
The Marvelification of this show, that I think the speeder bike, I could just about take it because the music was so epic with that scene of him kind of flying between all the lasers and stuff. It does feel weird to hear the Doctor's theme at any stage appear over explosions and violence, but more to the point, I thought there were people living in Unit Tower, including in sheltered housing, Wilf, unless he lives somewhere else. So every time they angle the building,
don't they say he's in a cottage?
Oh, okay, fine, never mind. I thought people lived in Unit Tower, in which case
you just thought it was like they had the deck and then it was just flats.
Yeah, just flat. Like what else?
It's like the Barbican down there.
We never see anything else. There's floor -10, floor 800, nothing in between. So they're just angling people at the Bone Beast as they fire lasers. Anyway.
That's funny. That's so funny. Jumping, I think, to just before the regeneration, we got a reveal of a returning character that I think we all were gagging for.
I think we were all gagging for.
They had that scene. They really heavily in this era relied on visuals of previous Doctors. So we got it in Rogue, we got it in The Story in the Engine, we got it in Wishworld, we're getting it now. So when the Doctor was zipping through all the faces on the TV, I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this like again. We literally just had a flashback to your face in the last episode. But I love that like as you hear 13's voice, it zips on the screen again. And I like the idea that the TARDIS knows what he's going to do. The TARDIS doesn't want him to do it. And so she's like, who can I pluck out of their timeline? Because it's a very loose explanation. 13's like, I got plucked out of my timeline. But I like the idea that TARDIS was like, who do I think you'll listen to? And they zipped through all of the previous incarnations and they chose 13 and they pulled her out. And the thing I loved the most about it, because I had heard whispers and rumors she was coming back, is I thought it was going to be Aleph, the fugitive Doctor, like a memory or a remembering, or it's in his head, or like in The Power of the Doctor, Guardians of the Edge, where they're like kind of there but not really. But I loved that this was simply the 13th Doctor in her form, picked up from her timeline and plopped there.
Yeah.
A la the Day of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Like these two Doctors are meeting.
I am the real Doctor from my real timeline. I have really come here and I will forget in a minute that I was here.
Exactly. And we even get a good little David Tennant joke where it's like, I thought it was going to be the other guy. He's always coming back. That got a good giggle out of me.
Yeah.
But what I just love the most is that Jodie Whittaker just slipped right back into that role, which is amazing.
Amazing.
Did you know they're both wearing a wig here?
Yeah.
But seeing in the cinema in real time and also online after the fact what the return of 13 means in an era that I think was so overly hated at the time. And as a character that means so much to so many, to have her back on screen even for a couple of minutes, especially it was special to me watching the two queer doctors interact.
Yeah.
Like, I know we joked about at the beginning with the whole pride thing, but it genuinely meant something so special. And I think this regeneration would have been so much more hollow and so much less significant if we didn't have that scene before.
Yes, I agree. It was really moving. It was beautiful. Like, I'm trying to think, was it spoiled for me? Maybe it was.
You had mentioned it to me like a week before we watched it, saying, "Oh, I've just seen something on Twitter. I don't know."
Okay, I think by this point in the story, I'd forgotten it and wasn't expecting it.
Good.
So it still came as a nice, like, whoa. And she's just great. Like, Jodie Whittaker, I understand so completely why she is such an important comfort character to so many people completely. And we need to completely redo all of our 13th Doctor episodes and talk again about that. And I do honestly genuinely feel that every time I watch her stories, I get a new appreciation for them, because I think what was difficult in her era and in every Doctor's era is you get such fierce comparison to what has come immediately before you as the template. And then everything is about how you are different to that template. And I think expectations of what her Doctor might be tainted what her Doctor was. And her Doctor was fantastic. And seeing her back in this role, there was a few wide shots of her in the TARDIS and fiddling with the controls. And, I just nudge that a little bit that way. Just a little tip. She was so natural. And she looked so right. Like, her silhouette, her Doctor.
Oh my God, the production stills of her there at the console. And
just looked like she always belonged. Like, always belonged in that TARDIS. And I would welcome a filler series of more Jodie next week. Like, any day of the week.
100%. Like a Fugitive Jodie-led spin-off miniseries about the missing adventures of 13 and Fugitive. Like, my God.
Brilliant. Like, absolutely. And there was something in her delivery as well. I think she was written really well. I think we'd said a long time ago we'd love to see 13 written by Russell T Davies. And that was been on our wish list for a long time. Like, because we were so intrigued to see what that would be like. And I think he really did her justice here. I think she was great.
Yeah.
There was something in just the line, like, "You're scared?" And he's like, "Yeah, terrified." And she's like, "Oh, like, don't go in fear, like, go bravely," or whatever. I've forgotten the exact line. I'm so sorry. I'm like, beautiful part where, and then go on to, like, butcher the words. But she just radiates just warmth, I think, off her. She is joy on the screen.
Yeah.
And so it did what it needed to do, which was, I think, carry fans through that moment of, this is happening. Like, hold tight, this is happening. It's scary, but we're good, we're fine. And just to be
a bit like,
she was a little painkiller on that moment, a little comfort blanket for that moment, just to soften it a little bit.
Yeah.
And it works so well for me.
Yeah.
Like, it was a series too early. I don't want him gone yet. I'm not over it. I don't believe he's gone.
Yeah.
But it made that moment more bearable.
I agree. It reminded me a bit of the phone call that 11 gave Clara in 12's Regeneration, where it was a bit of like hand holding over the edge. And for me, I think the most important thing it did, and being in the room surrounded by 13 fans watching it, when the Doctor says to her, "I love you," and she's like, "We never say that." And he's like, "I know, that's why you've got me." And she stands there and she's like, "I should say that to Yaz." And to, like, have the Doctor, the 13th Doctor, on screen talk about how she should tell Yaz she loves her just meant so much to so many. And somebody, this is the Doctor Who fans, they will dig. The exact outfit she's wearing is in the combination of the yellow braces and the rainbow shot and everything. The last episode she wore that in was the Witchfinders, which was like in the latter part of her first series. And so people are saying that, I'm sure that as soon as 13 got back, she forgot that happened, because that tends to be the way with Doctors meeting each other. But that she landed in the Witchfinders. She already knows she loves Yaz, but the words of 15 in the back of her head saying she never tells Yaz that she loves her is what then, self-fulfilling prophecy. That is why she never tells Yaz, because she knows she doesn't. So she can't change time. And much as, it's a retrospective edition, I do think that what they did, it didn't subtract. I always worry when you bring back cast that it's going to subtract from what came before. And it just added to it for me. I think it was a perfect scene. I don't think Jodie could have done better. I don't think Judy could have done better. I think it was really well done.
I actually do like to think that in this reality bending moment, where there's a moment here we're shifting all of reality by 1 degree, in having freshly told his past self, like, you never told her, but you should, and that's why I'm here, that there may have been some influence on his own past. And though we don't see it, maybe she went back and at some point she did finally say to Yaz, like, I do, not just love my time with you. I've loved you.
Can you imagine, like, they would never have done this, and obviously they didn't do it, but the exterior TARDIS is the same as Jodie's. It's the same one. Can you imagine she fades away and then suddenly we cut to another scene and she fades out and she's in front of that same TARDIS prop and Yaz is there. And like Yaz is like, you're right, Doctor. And she's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they like run off together. Like just a little bit like that. Just a little.
And then like hand
15
out,
seconds.
hold a hand, grab it and run.
Hand out, hold the hand, grab it and run. Like,
God.
Can you imagine what would have happened?
Imagine. That would have been scandalously good. And they could have filmed it in a car park and I would have eaten it up.
They could have filmed it anywhere. Take the TARDIS prop you've already had, the costume that she's already in, and then just grab her and film it.
And run. That would have been so good. Probably would have slightly interrupted the flow of Shinji's regeneration. Would have been so good. Yeah, I would have loved that. And then we get the moment itself, the regeneration, the most explosive we've ever seen, but I don't think we've ever seen one happen in space before.
No.
They're getting bigger every time.
Next time it's going to be in a supernova.
Yes. I still had like a moment here of not really knowing what was going to happen because I was like, oh, maybe they're still going to do open-ended. Someone had said to me, I've heard a name. And I was like, well, I haven't, so shush. And then you were like, I've heard a name. And I was like, well, I haven't. And then someone did a tweet and they were like, oh, if they really have brought back a past companion, all I want to say about the rumors is, past companions should never play the Doctor. And I was kind of like, I'm a little pissed that you did that. Like that is an open leak to me. Like that's not one to just put on the timeline without any hashtags on it. Like that's kind of annoying.
I saw someone post a TikTok where they went, they're really going to make Rose the Doctor before they bring back Martha Jones, aren't they? And I was like, shut up! I don't want that to be true. Well, not that I don't want it to be true, but like, don't tell everyone.
Thank God I dodged it. And so I was completely caught off guard because I would never have had Billie Piper down as the person. I joked to you, there was a rumor that someone has said who's going to be the Doctor next is going to be at the BAFTAs. So I put on the BAFTAs. And I was like, Saran Jones? And then I was like, oh, it's Billie Piper. Billie Piper's the Doctor, but as a joke.
But this was before I'd heard the name. So I was like, lol, yeah, of course. But then I took a screenshot on Wednesday last week. And I'm so glad. As soon as I saw this, I thought, my fucking God, this better not make its way to Alice's timeline. It was from the Swindon Advertiser, Name and Shame. And they said, Swindon-born celebrity in pole position to be the next Doctor Who. And it's got a big picture of Billie Piper at the BAFTAs on it. And I screenshot that because I knew you didn't know. So when it happened, I could be like, thank God you didn't see this.
No, honestly, thank God. Like, I don't see... And I think I'd heard as well that there was like, oh, it's going to come out in the press. It's going to come out in the press. So presumably the BBC did manage to suppress the story. No idea how. I don't know. They
probably only filmed it just before. Like, it probably was filmed not long before the BAFTAs.
Yeah.
And then that's why it was so hot and leaking. But yeah,
because
they
by the
BAFTAs,
down. She has real blonde hair. And they're using clearly a wig in this. So it must have been pre-BAFTA, but not necessarily very far away from it. I like to think as well now that she's just preemptively got the blonde hair, so she's just ready to go when they need her.
Yeah, she was just like, you know what, this is coming. Let me just get ready. Let me go to the salon that I like.
And then Beth pointed out, our friend of the pod, Beth, had noticed that Billie has a rose necklace on the BAFTA red carpet, and we all missed it. Yeah. We all missed it. I absolutely yelled and screamed. I was like, it just came out of me. I was like, I think I actually might have shouted "fuck off" like really loud.
I think I heard you shout that.
And I think I yelled it. And I think it was almost like before I even knew what had come out of my mouth, said it. I was aghast. Like and this is the thing. For me, this is why I'm like, what did I think of this episode? I don't know. Because I was yelling, screaming, and shaking.
I love the idea of Billie Piper being the Doctor.
Oh my God. Oh my God, yeah. Like, not even, this is the thing. Is it fan service? Sure. But people forget this. Billie Piper is a BAFTA-nominated, Olivier-winning director, actor, pop star. She is such a quadruple threat. She is not just like, she wasn't just good as Rose. People forget that Billie Piper is a huge piece of the puzzle as to why the show worked when it came back. Yeah. Like, she's not just like there. It's not like, oh, it's Chris Ferguson, Rusty Davies, and Billie was there. Billy herself is like a huge chunk of why it worked.
Christopher Eccleston is the first person to not only say Billy was the reason it worked, but since like 2021, he's been on the record saying, I think Billy Piper would be a fantastic actor to play the Doctor. And like we've now shown so many times that previous actors from the show can be the Doctor. It happened with Colin Baker, it happened with Peter Capaldi. We have been shown that previous Doctors can come back and play the role again. It's happened with David Tennant. I don't personally see an issue, and we'll get into it in a second. I know this episode's very long. We'll get into it in a second about whether or not she actually is the Doctor, because that's still up in the air. But I don't really see... There is a valid argument with people being like, oh my God, that's so creepy that, you know, you're so obsessed with your ex from 4 billion years ago that you've taken her face. I understand it. I get it. But for me, like you said, Billy is such an incredible actor that I would just be excited to see what she does with it.
Yeah. I've got no concern about her in the role, in any role they give her. Because I think she's such a talent. If you've not seen I Hate Susie, sort that out immediately. National Theatre Live's got Yerma. She's done so much that she's done incredibly well. I think she's such a talent that you haven't seen the half of it if you've only seen Doctor Who. And I'm so excited to see in 20 years how much she has honed that craft and what she is doing now. Given that Doctor Who was really like her big first acting gig. There was, I think, one other show she did prior to Doctor Who, but like it was like she was pretty fresh onto it.
It was the big one. It was the big one.
So why? Who is she? Who, when, how?
Well, who, when, how? Well, this is the thing. So we all left cinema, we were like, oh my God, Billy Piper's the Doctor. But in the credits, it makes a real point of saying Ncuti Gatwa is the Doctor, Jodie Whittaker is the Doctor, and introducing Billy Piper. Nothing. And every other Doctor Regeneration, going all the way back to 2005, has said, and introducing blank as the Doctor, even said, and introducing David Tennant as the Doctor before the Star Beast in Power of the Doctor. And the BBC's official news release about it says, Ncuti Gatwa regenerated into Billy Piper. True.
Yeah.
Who is she? Why is she there? How is it? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Everybody within the production team, so like Russell, Jane Tranter, everyone has been posting who, what, when, how, she. Billy posted saying a rose is a rose is a rose. And Jane Tranter posted saying, I love Rose Tyler. My theory, and I'll put it out on the pod, is, well, my main thing is I think they're just deciding what they want to do. Maybe she will be the Doctor, maybe she won't. The cards are in their hand. I think that there's a world in which the Doctor shot all his regeneration energy into the heart of the TARDIS, and that triggered some kind of causal link to Rose, who has sucked up the energy in the heart of the TARDIS at one point or another. And so when he fully regenerates, something wibbly wobbly happens, because I'm going to be honest, I don't think Billy Piper would sign up for like a 3-season deal as Doctor. She's been on record saying, I'd be a rat up a drain pipe for a 4-part miniseries, all filmed in London. I do not see her moving to Cardiff.
She said
if it's filmed
that.
in London. She did. I do not see her moving to Cardiff for 4 years.
Yeah, she was like, I'd do it again in London. And then laughed. This was like 2 years ago.
Literally. So I think, whether she's the Doctor or not, I think we're getting a special with her. I think, or like a few specials. I think we're getting a short run. So I can see a world where she regenerates and she says, oh, hello, because it's Rose back in the TARDIS. And she is like, I'm back in the TARDIS. Oh my God. And the newly regenerated Doctor, and my perfect world, I do have to come to the conclusion Ncuti has regenerated. And much as I don't want that, I'll have to move on. In an ideal world, Ncuti is just somewhere in the parallel world and it's about finding Ncuti. But I think it will be a one-off special about Rose piloting the TARDIS to try and find the Doctor. And you know that Stephen Moffat unreleased script about Clara in the 50th, where they didn't know if they were going to have a Doctor signed on, trying to find the Doctor? I think we'll have a little cameo city of Rose. I'd love to see her fighting the Daleks again. And the episode ends with her finally finding the Doctor, and the Doctor has regenerated into blank. And that's when we get the release of Saran Jones as the new Doctor.
I think right now it's Billy Piper as the Doctor. I think the only reason there's no name attached to it, truly honestly, is just that because the show has not been formally commissioned. They are not ready to even maybe sign a contract with her, which is like, here is your season, here's your 5 episodes, here's your 10, maybe like, we don't know. It might not even be here's what we're going to pay you yet, because we just don't know.
But David Tennant said that. He was like, when he regenerated at the end of season 1, he was like, I signed on to do a regeneration scene. He's quoted to be like, that could be all I could have ever done. I would have just done a regeneration scene and then that would have been it. Like, the fact they haven't said in the credits that she's the Doctor, I think is very deliberate.
I think they're keeping their options open because I think there's an element to this, which is let's actually gauge what the public reaction is to this. Let's see if people accept this, or if we need to do a little bit of kind of like, oh, that's not really the Doctor. which would be a bit of a shame because I think she's more than capable of actually carrying it. And I hope then that she's not just the Doctor for 3 episodes and trips on a brick. But if she is, she is. And that's probably the more realistic version. I think that theory is good. I've seen similar sit on Twitter about, like, oh, maybe it's to do with the heart of the TARDIS and this and that. Again, I think we're calling back to storylines that wrapped up 20 years ago now.
When has that stopped Russell in this era?
It's never stopped him. It should stop him. And I think it'd be a shame if that is what it is, because I kind of think Rose's story's done. I'm ready to see.
I mean, we thought Donna's was as well.
I just so like the idea of Billie Piper really bringing all the flex that a Doctor can bring to the role, because Rose Tyler.
No, I do agree with that.
Because Rose Tyler steps up to TARDIS, she's Dalek. She's scared. She has to react a certain way and go, Daleks, because everyone does, because she's a human. If she steps out and she's the Doctor, she can react any which way she wants because she's in control of the situation. And that, for me, is so much more interesting.
Yeah. I'd love to see her as the Doctor. I just don't see her doing it, but I would love it. Like, I would genuinely love it. I'm so on the train of Billie Piper being the 16th Doctor.
And I think she has been directed in that moment to do the Rose Tyler voice. Because if you listen again to the way she says, oh, hi there, she's doing a smidge of what they call the Rose Tyler chav scent, which is not a term I've coined, and I'm not saying we should use that word chav, but I do think they've directed her to use it deliberately a little ambiguously as to, like, okay, who could this be? Who might this be? And it could go anywhere.
And that's what that's what they want us to. Russell literally was saying, like, who, how, why, what, where. Like, that's what they want us to be talking about. They want us to be asking.
Yeah.
And
we're creating the content they crave, which is a shame.
Wholala really is the content they crave. When Russell said we want this season to be making content, he was talking exclusively about you and me. Did we get invited to TARDIS? No, we didn't, but that's by the by.
No, we did not. No, we did not get invited to the TARDIS. And when we met him, what did he say to us? Who are you?
Which one's that? The one for the gays and theys. Oh!
Which one is that? Oh! Right. Oh, still don't know.
Right. Closing thoughts, Alistair. What are your closing thoughts on the episode?
My closing thoughts, I'll be honest, I've ended up in a jovial mood with you, Sam. You've lightened my mood. You've made me feel much better about things, because I've been doom scrolling for 2 days, and actually I've realised that this can be quite fun. I think I'm worried. I am really worried. I think the show is in a bad way. And I think the reason for that is I do think that Russell has somewhat broken the trust with the fans in terms of the storytelling. Yeah. I think the story was weak and it was messy. I'm not saying that's his fault. Like, I really am not. Like, I think it's a victim of circumstance. I think there has been like 2, 3, 4, or even 5 things have happened behind the scenes that have gone badly wrong that they have had to scramble to fix. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm speculating. It feels like more than one thing has gone badly wrong, and the story has had to change to accommodate that. And I think that whether or not the rest of the series was good, and we're going to do a more full series review next week, I think often these kind of shows are defined by their ending, and this is the ending to a 2-series arc. Game of Thrones is a example for me. It bottled its final season, made a total mess of it, rushed it. Story was messy, lots of unsatisfying resolutions to character stories, and it dropped out of cultural relevance overnight. Like, it was memed to death for how bad its ending was, and overnight, Game of Thrones disappeared. The fandom disappeared. Like the Croatia tours of Game of Thrones locations shriveled up. It just lost all its relevance. So, and yes, has it generated content? Of course, but someone's already put a video on Twitter of them scrolling TikTok for 2 minutes uninterrupted of just videos of people dunking on the episode. So I'm worried. I am worried, but I think if anyone's going to bring it back, come on, Billy.
Come on, Billy.
But we'll see. Depends again who's writing it, what's the story, when's it back, how long are we waiting?
No, exactly. I think
what about you?
I'll get into all my thoughts. Originally, dear listener, we were saying, maybe we'll mix our thoughts of the season as a whole into this episode. We're hedging on 2 hours. I'm very glad we didn't do that. But to talk about the reality war, I do believe, and I know for a fact I had a lot of fun with this episode. I had a lot of fun. And up until the Omega thing, I was like, this is near faultless for me. Like, I am really, truly loving this episode. The Omega thing fumbled the ball. I'm willing to forgive that. The latter part, I agree with you. I think there was lots behind the scenes, and I commend Russell on putting together the episode that we did get. I just think that it's a shame because it is so clearly pieced together, and that's not what they intended. I agree with you, and I would privy a warning to all dear listeners that, like, we shouldn't ever judge a series as a whole by its finale, but you're not wrong in that people do, and that does have consequences. I am worried about the future. I'm curious about the future. I'm excited about the future. But more than anything, I would just like a little bit of honesty with the fans and also reassurance for the fans. Where if they said, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know. And they have said that. They've been like, hey, it's in Disney's hands. We have to wait to hear from them. But you've seen all these reports recently. People are like, oh, Doctor Who's saved. They've said they're going to make it. They said they're going to make it. A source told us. BBC said nothing. We're currently in a position where Ncuti has left. And I think that's really sad. Yeah. It feels like his time has been cut short. And right now as a fandom, not only do we not know if our show is getting renewed, but we don't even know who our current Doctor is. And I think that is a really, really dangerous... If I was Russell, I would be trying to work some kind of deal with the BBC or Disney or whatever to fast track an episode, if not for this Christmas, for at some point next year, so that they can at least announce saying, just so you all know, Billy's the Doctor and you've got a special in 2027. Like, let us be in a position where we know where we're going, because otherwise people might not be here when it comes around.
We will see what happens. We'll be watching this career closely. War Between the Land and Sea, we'll get into that next week as well.
Yeah, exactly. We had a whole trailer for that. We'll dive into that next week. I'm very excited. But before then, I've got a little game for you.
A little game? Go on then.
A little game called Camp or Damn.
A more muted woohoo this week.
I'm still woohooing. There was a lot of camp in this episode. For anyone who hasn't listened before, Wholala love to play a little game called Camp or Damp every week where we look back at the moments of the episode we've just seen and say whether they're camp or whether they're damp. Now, Alasdair, for the final live Doctor Who episode in announced history, would you like to play Camp or Damp?
I would, before we do Camp or Damp for War Between the Land and the Sea. Which some people have been changing into the acronym of like, it almost reads like it says like Twatblad.
TWBTLATS. Twatblad.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah. Susan Triad being another unit employed child, Camp or Damp.
Oh my God, scream. I'm only 1 year old.
No wonder Kate wanted you.
No wonder. She never misses a CV. She couldn't forget you.
Camp. Interesting one here. I think we might have differing views on this. Mel's perm, Camp or Damp.
Oh God. It's almost, if it wasn't, it's so bad to me that it's almost camp. But
I love it.
You know, it's halfway there. I couldn't say. It's halfway to camp.
Are you calling it amp?
It's amp. It's amp for me.
It's camp for me. I love it. I'm sorry. And finally,
that's fine.
Billy Piper's reveal, Camp or Damp.
For me, camp.
I agree.
For me, camp. Like, it's Billy Piper as the Doctor. This is for me.
I watched it, like, I love Rose and I love Billy and I'm excited. But even I was like, this is for Alasdair.
Do you understand how confused I was? Do you understand? Like
I think they could have showed any pile of dog shit, and this certainly wasn't dog shit, but if they regenerate Billy Piper at the end, you'd still be like, hey,
you might have won me over. You got me back. Oh, go on.
You might have. Oh, come on. Well, look, next week we will dive into our thoughts in the season as a whole, but thank you so much for sticking with us through this bumper episode of Wholala. If you enjoyed, you can reach out to us on all of our social media. We are everywhere at WholalaPod. We are on Instagram, we are on TikTok, we are on X, we are on Blue Sky at WholalaPod. You can also email us, wholalapod@gmail.com. We would love to know. Send us your thoughts on the season as a whole. We'd love some voice notes to include in our episode. And Happy Pride Month as well. Happy Pride Month.
Yes, if you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars on the platform you're listening on. That's very appreciated and it helps us out. You can also follow us, get notified when we drop our new episode next week about what we thought of the series overall and other predictions for the future of Who. We might have new news by then. Who knows? You can also buy us a coffee to support the podcast. ko-fi coffee and search for Wholala. And of course, you can share the podcast with a friend who you think will enjoy it. Or if you think we made a really good take, give them a time code and say, listen to this bit. They're really clever.
They're really good in this bit. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week to conclude our thoughts on season 2.
We'll see you then.
Goodbye.
Bye.